We're in the midst of the story in Parshat Toldot that keeps us engaged in trying to understand how Yaakov Avinu did what he did, how Yitzchak Avinu didn't realize what he did, how Rivka Imenu plotted the whole thing, what happened with Esav and the like. And we have been trying to make a little bit of headway, but also trying to understand the methodology of the interaction between the psukim and how the different Mefarshi HaMikra want to help us understand the dynamic of what the Torah conveys. Today, just to recognize that to the end of the interaction between Yaakov and Yitzchak, it would seem that Yitzchak really did not appreciate entirely, or at all, actually, that he was dealing with Yaakov, but he certainly has his suspicions, and we have various examples of this throughout the story. All the senses, except for sight, are being invoked in order to try to understand what, along with Yitzchak, we're trying to ferret out what it all means. Chazal, when they read these stories, not only read them on the plane of the actual words spoken and trying to understand them, a level of pshat, not only on the level of medrash, meaning trying to unpack some of the other layers of meaning that are within, but there's even another layer that I want to draw our attention to today. And that is related also in terms of medrash, but not a medrash per se that is localized to the story as it's happening, is filling in some kind of a gap from the Torah Shebichtav through the Torah Shebal Peh. That would be enough. It's something more than that. It's even a projection of a story that hasn't yet transpired, that perhaps is already hinted to in the Torah. The very reality that the Torah itself is given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu means that on a certain level, not only the past, but also the future in a certain way is programmed within it. Prophetic words, predictive elements that we find in the Torah. Chazal were also mining the story of Yaakov, Esav, Yitzchak, Rivka, etc., as a model for things that were to come in the future. So, for instance, on the level of Pshat, the fact that Rivka Imenu finds out she has two children who are also two nations within her is itself already tipping us off that there is going to be a struggle and a conflict during their lifetime, but perhaps also one that's going to transcend their lifetime, and it has to do with national implications, right? If you just think about it, the words back in chapter 25, Perek Chaf Hey, when she goes to seek out from Hashem what exactly the reason is for the feeling that she has of pain, of being out of sorts and the like. Vayomer Hashem la shnei goyim bevitnech ushnei leumim mimiayich yiparedu uleom milaom ye'ematz v'rav ya'avod sa'ir. She hears that there are two nations inside of her, in her stomach, two peoples that will split out from within her, and one will be in some way showing their strength over the other. They will overwhelm the other. And the ambiguous statement, V'rav ya'avod sa'ir, the elder will serve the younger, or the elder will put upon the younger. It's not clear what it means. It's almost as if you could imagine a wrestling match where you're not sure who's on top, like we had just now in our Parsha. You're not sure who's winning. We always assume when this happens that Rivka Imenu knows she's having twins. But actually, that's not clear. Only the next pasuk, if you look in go back to chapter 25, pasuk Chaf Daled, it actually describes Vayimileu Yamea Laledet, her days to give birth filled out, i.e., she came due. V'hinei tomim bevitna. Behold, surprise, there are twins within her. we don't have any record of an ultrasound from back in the day. How does she know she has twins? She doesn't know. And there's a question here if she thinks she's going to have a child who will be torn in different directions and will actually, that child will then have different nations come from that child. Nations or tribes, it could be variously understood. Now, we've already talked about that parak. I don't want to anchor us there, but look at a pasuk in chapter 27. I want to focus on when right before Yitzchak gives the actual bracha, the one that we know of Yitain L'chai Elokim. Look at verse 27. And there's this idea that he smells the smell of his clothing, which is the smell of the field. All right, there's something here that what's the word? Should pique our attention about what exactly is being conveyed. All right, the reach bigadav, the aroma of the clothing. And here Chazal looking with the lens of their own moment, but also appreciating that the Torah itself is in a certain way, whatever the word is, projecting something that's coming up, gives us a window into some notion of some kind of struggle, maybe that was in the mind of Yitzchak Avinu from a spiritual perspective, something, what should I call it? Something that could be positive, even that could emerge from within a struggle that may take place within the Jewish people themselves. Let me explain what I mean, in case you feel I'm talking in tongues. The Gemara in Masachet Sanhedrin tells us that when it says Vayarach et Reach Bigadav, the Gemara points out, Masachet Sanhedrin, right? Vayarach et Reach Bigadav, al tikrei Bigadav ela Bogdav. Read not the aroma of the clothing, but the aroma of the ones who are treacherous, of the turncoats. There seems to be something here about Yitzchak appreciating that there's something maybe even positive that can emerge from those who at first blush seem to be very much the enemies of the Jewish people. And the idea that Chazal themselves struggle with this idea, this concept, this possibility that within the Jewish people, there would later on emerge people who would essentially be engaged in treacherous behavior, perfidious behavior. What other language could I use to explain it? I want to show you one of the midrashim just for your consideration and to appreciate what it means that that this is a phenomenon that Klal Yisrael has been dealing with from the time of the life of an Esav, who grows up in a Jewish home, who grows up with Jewish values, etc., and then joins the jackals. He joins the other team, and Yitzchak Avinu was the first one to grapple with the fact of Jewish people who betray the Jewish people, and yet felt that we shouldn't completely lose hope in them, and we should consider something, I don't want to call it redemptive, but the possibility of redemption from even this group. I'll put it on the screen so you could actually see it inside. As of all things, it's actually a story about Hanukkah. And we've learned this before, but it's really it's timely in this regard. So if you look on the screen, this is the Medrash. The Medrash describes when it says that Yaakov, Yitzchak did not recognize Yaakov, v'lo hikiro, he didn't recognize him. At the time when there were wicked ones who who arose from within Yaakov, within the Jewish people, Yitzchak could not even recognize those people. They were seen to be formed. I'm reading from Breisheet, this is Breisheet Rabbah, Parsha Tola, Parsha Samachay. Yeah. So just for consideration. When you start reading through, it gives you different examples of where this came up. First of all, it gives you, and here's two of them for our consideration. We're going to really learn the second one, but there's here, right? Vayarach et rech begadav v'yavarchehu kegon Yosef Meshita v'Yakim ish tzororot. So, like the stories of Yosef Meshita and the story of Yakim ish tzororot. I'll skip the story of Yosef Meshita because I want to move on. But the story of Yakim ish tzororot is for sure exactly the Hanukkah story, although the Yosef Meshita maybe as well. But this one actually involves the Tanaim who lived at exactly the time of Hanukkah, of the persecutions of Hanukkah. And that's the story of Yakum ish tzororot. And it's told to us in the context of Yitzchak saying, even about Yaakov, he doesn't recognize him. He smells the smell of the treachery, even from within the Jewish people, right? The Yakum ish tzororot, haya ben achoto Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer ish tzoreda. We know that Yosef ben Yoezer ish tzoreda lived at the time of Hanukkah. He's together with Yosef ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. And you look in Pirkei Avot, Mishnah Dalet. So Yakum ish tzororot ben achoto shel Rabbi Yosef. He was the nephew. This fellow Yakum ish tzororot. So this fellow Yakum ish tzororot v'avarachiv susaya b'shabta. He was riding a horse on Shabbat. The Chachamim had declared that it was forbidden to ride a horse on Shabbat. You're not allowed to work your animals on Shabbat in terms of service in the field. But even the riding on the animal is prohibited by the Chachamim. And therefore, it's an act of open rebellion. So in the beginning of the 20th century, it would be seeing someone smoking on Shabbos. So in those days, it was riding on a horse on Shabbos. Smoking on Shabbos, by the way, is prohibited de oraita, but here de rabbanan. So he's riding a horse. Azal kume sharita lemitztabla. He passed by a caravan of that was taking someone out to be hung. Amar Rabbi, Amar Le, sorry, he saw him. Right. The nephew said to his uncle, "Look at the horse that I'm riding, and look at the horse that you're riding." Meaning, I'm riding a horse, I'm free, and I'm an aristocrat of some sort, and you are riding a horse to be put to death. Yeah. So Amar Le, the uncle, said to his nephew, "Im kein lamach isav kal vachomer lo no." If this is what happens, the uncle said to his nephew, the uncle who was the rabbi, said to his nephew who was had joined the forces of Antiochus and society, etc., the Greek society. If that's how those who anger God are treated, all the more so will those who do God's will be treated, i.e., meaning after this world, if not in this world. Marle said the nephew to his uncle, did anyone do his will more than you? And look what's happening to you, being killed. And I'm doing great. So the uncle said to his nephew, the Rebbe said to his nephew, Amar lo, v'imkachlo seirit sono kal v'chomer lamach isav. If this is the punishment that goes along with the people who do God's will, all the more so the punishment that will come to those who anger Hashem, meaning to you, my nephew. But here's the part that's really amazing. It's a terrible story. By the way, Yosef ben Yoezer was killed. Nichnas bo hadavar ke'eres shel achna v'halach v'kim be'atzma arba mitot beitin skila srei v'herag v'chenek. So the words of Yosef ben Yoezer entered into Yakum ish tzororot so strongly that it was like a viper's venom. And so he went and he fulfilled for himself, upon himself, he carried out the 4 mitot beitin, the 4 types of capital punishment against himself in a very public way. It starts describing, it's pretty grotesque, describes how he was able to jerry-rig things so that he could fulfill all of the 4 types of death. It's trying to play out, the idea that he really took it to heart. He got the musar that his uncle had given him. Nitnam name Yosef ben Yoezer Tzarei v'ra'a mitato parcha be'avir. It says that Yosef ben Yoezer, so he fell asleep, and he saw that the bed of his nephew was floating in the air, and he declared out loud in one simple hour, in a quick hour, in one moment, basically, my nephew got into Gan Eden before me. In other words, he did tshuva, even though he was a turncoat and treacherous, and he was a double agent and working for the other team, betraying the Jewish people. Nonetheless, there was something within him that enabled him to do tshuva. And the other story, again, is also about a similar situation. This one, for sure, we situate in Hanukkah. The story before it has to do with the menorah, but it's not clear it's actually Hanukkah or not. We learned from here a great lesson that Yitzchak Avinu was not prepared to give up on a child who may have been at that moment a wayward child. He was in his mind, he thinks it's Esav. Velohi Kiro, he doesn't know really necessarily all of what Esav's about, etc. He's still willing to say, but there's something, I haven't completely lost hope in him. There's something redemptive here. And that's a beautiful message, of course, of Parsha Toldot, a beautiful message, which is often a very hard lesson and message for the Jewish people. It does not mean, by the way, that Yitzchak would have said to Esav, it's okay that you're performing actions which are completely and totally at loggerheads with the Torah, and you're fine and wonderful, and I bless you. The point was he could smell the aroma, even within the treachery, of something that might be still possibly worthy of, or that could have been attaining redemption. By the by, the end of this story that I just showed with the Medrash, give me a moment, shall I take a question, comment in a moment, was not a story about, even in the moment of betrayal, right, that Yosef ben was saying, oh, you're amazing, you're fine, it's okay, I'm okay, you're okay. None of that, right? He was giving it to his nephew to the extent that he could. I mean, he's being led out to be killed, right? But he was not, he still wanted to enter into a dialogue with him to possibly bring him a little closer. And that's also a message, of course, about Hanukkah. In Hanukkah, the struggle between the Jewish people and the Greeks of Antiochus, the Seleucid Greeks, the military campaign, but also the cultural element, which involved a much more challenging landscape, since there were many Hellenized Jews who, if you asked them how they were going to vote, certainly not going to vote with the zealots, these religious fanatics who want the temple and who want there to be, right, one God. They would want to be with the culture of enlightenment of the Greeks, right? So even in that struggle, the idea that a Yitzchak Avinu, and that some of that emerges from the Jewish home, that's going to happen. But Yarach Rech Bigadav, again, it's not literally what the words mean, right? No one should confuse it. But Rech Bogdav, and why do Chazal think they can say that? Number one, because Bet Gimel Dalid, Bagad is the word for treachery, betrayal, but it's also the word for clothing, right? Because clothing also masks something, right? All the way from the time of Gan Eden, it's necessary, but it is masking the essence. It needs to, of necessity, bagad, right? And the idea, therefore, those clothes, just to bring it full circle, give me one more minute, Shelley, I'm sorry, that those clothes herald from Gan Eden, which come even in the wake of Chet, but are still with us, right? And that there's possibly something redemptive there. We saw previously Rashi, Shnatan bo reach tov zeu reach tapuchim, as Chazal darshans, the reach of Gan Eden. It says here shenichnas imo reach Gan Eden, right? Can we see that there may be the possibility of something redemptive even in those who betray the Jewish people? It may be hard in the moment, but that is also the faith of Klal Yisrael as well. Okay, Shelley, go ahead, and anyone else who wanted to say questions, comments, wanted to add to our discussion. Go ahead.
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. To say that
more?
What?
Even more complicated than I've already made it?
Yes. because you're making it in some ways black and white about how the Hellenized Jews were traitors, and a traitor to me is somebody like Paulo or something like that in the Middle Ages who converts to Christianity and actually helps the people mess up Judaism, and you can kill them by bringing up this kind of debate. I think that a lot of the Hellenized kind of thing in the story of Hanukkah is more like America now. It's this stuff is just it's hard, or I don't know about it, because basically there's almost 200 years of between the time of the Maccabees and the destruction of the Second Temple, where people could have even forgotten about most Judaism. You've got the high priest who doesn't know anything. I mean, I heard a really good lecture on what Maimonides said about what the miracle of Hanukkah was yesterday.
We'll
and
come to that another time. I'm going to give a shir about that on Sunday. If you're interested, you can come
sovereignty
10 o'clock.
On the sovereignty. So anyway, so I just don't think you should say that Esav is necessarily the treachery of somebody who converts and helps the enemy, as opposed to somebody, I just don't want to do this. It's just too hard for me. We have to deal with these people, the different groups, differently.
Good. You are refining what I'm saying. I might have said it too harshly. I'm sorry. There is the group of people who are actually traitors, who are working actively to undermine Judaism in that period. And those are the treacherous people. And then there's the faithful people. And then there are the people who, from the perspective of values and the like, are confused. They're Hellenized. They don't know what Jewish values are, because so many of their values, I thought we were going to see something else, which is there is like between 164 BCE and 70 CE, that's like around 200 years. There's also 200 years before the story of Hanukkah, from 332 BCE, when Alexander of Macedon arrives in the Holy Land, when the Greek culture arrives, right? So there's a lot of confusion. You're right. You're right. I don't mean to lump everybody together, that everybody was Yosef. You were either with the Maccabees, or you were, with the Hashmonaim, or you were with Yaakov Ish Tzororot, the nephew. You are right. My point was just to say, Hanukkah is about saying, don't lose hope in people who are confused, people who have become Hellenized, even the person who, on the face of it, at the moment, is very much a traitor, like Yaakov Ish Tzororot. He's the extreme example. Sorry, I didn't mean to tar him with the same brush. Everybody, it was such a stark black and white. I'm sorry. You are correct. But it is also true, though, that there were many people who had internalized that culture to the point where it was really very challenging to understand in what sense they consider themselves Jews, and in what sense they'd become part of the ambient culture, the regnant culture, which very much was Hellenistic. That's undeniable, right? So I always say the big miracle of Hanukkah to me is that there was no civil war that became part of the holiday. Like, there's no theme of the holiday. We fight against those Jews, in quotation marks. We don't do that.
You mean like we have in the Second Temple, the destruction of the Second Temple period? We
have a date for that. That's a date. That's a day of mourning, not a day of celebration. Exactly my point. That day, which is all about baseless hatred and right? Exactly. But Hanukkah could have been that, but it's not. And there's a message in that. My point is just now back to regular scheduled programming in Parsha Toldot. We grapple with the question of, how could it be that the Jewish people in any generation have people within our family who betray us, who write disgusting op-ed pieces that ask for Israel to come to harm? How could that be? So it turns out the question is already in Parsha Toldot. And the question is being asked in the home of Yitzchak and Rivka. And to the end, whatever Esav became, whatever it is, there's something here where Yitzchak still wants to give him a bracha. Now, by the way, and this is the amazing part, it's not even Esav in the room. It's Yaakov in the room. And Chazal are willing to say that there's still a smell, both on one level, it's Gan Eden, and another level, it's treachery. And still, I'll give you a bracha. So in other words, if you by this medrash reading, vayigash, vayishaklo, vayarach et reach bigadav vayivarchehu, comma. Then he said, vayomer re'ei reach b'ni kirech sedeh shebercho Hashem. Then he talked about the Gan Eden part. Then he gave him the rest of the bracha. Yeah. Okay. Karen pointed out free will is only real if you have the freedom to destroy life without a net. Yeah. Right. Right. And it cuts both ways. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, and there are choices. There are choices. It's just to say that here's another, from a methodological perspective, another way of reading this story, which of course very much this is our tradition, is not just in reference to what do the words mean, not just in reference to how does it fit in with other pieces, or how come there are gaps here, and does our tradition tell us pieces that fit in, but also this was an example where I don't think, I could be mistaken, I don't think, that Yitzchak Avinu is thinking actively, there's going to be this guy named Yochum Ish Tzororot, he's going to have an uncle who's a rabbi, who's Yosef ben Yoezer, one of the greatest Tanaim from the generation of Hanukkah, right? Highly unlikely. But Chazal aren't claiming that. They're claiming that on these words, when you are a Jew reading these words, you should think a little bit about how we grapple with a challenge that Yitzchak and Rivka are grappling with. How could it be that from the Jewish home will emanate someone who will be so far away? By the by, in the story of Yosef ben Yoezer and his nephew, it is the Musar that Yosef ben Yoezer gives his nephew that turns him around. He didn't just sail on. He didn't cut him off. He didn't say, I don't talk to you. He wasn't even direct. He asked him to think about what the implication of his actions were. A communication that did not happen in the home of Yitzchak and Rivka. So, anyone else, or we'll move on to the rest of the content of the bracha?
Rabbi, I still have to say that you're still making this too black and white. What did this? I can't remember what his name is. The nephew. What did he do? Did he run get rid of? Did he run something where I'm going to get rid of your circumcision so you can go to the gymnasium and run around and be in the races? Or did he just decide, I don't really like this Torah stuff anymore. I like this Greek stuff. It's more fun. It's more beautiful. It's more modern. There's a big difference.
There is a difference. His nephew, according to the tradition, was not just a guy riding around on a horse. He was involved in other kinds of things that were dragging down the Jewish people. That's my understanding. I mean, the idea here that when they describe someone who's riding on a horse and his nephew is being taken out to be killed, the point is that he has clearly left the fold to the point where he's goading his uncle, right? He's telling him, look at you and look at me. The lifestyle I chose is the winning. I bet on the winning horse and you didn't. And I'm going to make it and you're not. And part of Hanukkah, by the way, just to push back a little bit, is actually about light and darkness. It is. It's not about gray. That's the point, is that things got so gray and so confused and so amalgamated and so synthesized that it was a mishmash and didn't know up from down. And that was part of it. Now, whether that played out in the end in a good way or a bad way after the time of Hanukkah, or whether it had certain consequences, stick with me. It's on Sunday. We'll talk about that a little more at the cultural piece. But the reality of the time actually was light and darkness. Why do you think that's the symbol? Right? It's not make a barbecue in your backyard because Chanukah HaMizbeach, so make a Mizbeach in your backyard. It's about the menorah, the Nes Pachshem, and all of that. I mean, that is about the contrast. So I think that is where things were coming to a head. If you were already in a point where when Antiochus is making his decrees and you're kind of happy and celebrating, down with those crazy Jews and their idea that we need, whatever it is, Brit Milah, Shabbat, etc. Yeah. Okay. So I don't have a record right now to go through the whole thing. Like, what was Yochim Soror? Is he mentioned in other books, other places, other things that he did? I think he's standing out as someone who Davka did tshuva. That's the point. And he's obviously close enough that he's riding around on Shabbos on a horse. It's like, yeah. In one version of this, he's a meshumad. He's the one actually who became a meshumad, means he denied Judaism, and according to one of the midrashim, it's the Medrash Tehillim, he's the one who ratted out his uncle and said, my uncle is still teaching people Torah to do Brit Milah, Shabbat, etc. And he actually had him convicted, which, again, that's a Medrash Tehillim. It's not Breisheet Rabbah. It's a Medrash Tehillim's written a little bit later, but that's the description. So once you're already ratting out the rabbis and getting them killed, well, I think that probably qualifies. Yeah. But even though I was trying to stay out of mentioning it, but since you pushed me, so I'm going to say, yeah. But in the Breisheet Rabbah doesn't even mention that part. Just as you were riding by on the horse, doesn't mention the part where he's actually essentially the turncoat, the betrayer. Anyway.
Rabbi, could I?
Hi, Helen. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry I came in late, so the whole Hanukkah connection I missed. But I have to be shocked by Ovadiah's Haftorah this Shabbos about his evil portrayal of Esav. And then number two, that we think that the meal was goat meat. But there's a difference between domesticated animals and animals in the wild. So the only goat that would be hunted by Nimrod, possibly a mountain goat. But what is a domesticated animal that doesn't require hunting? I don't think goat would fit the case. So that's my two. Sorry, I missed your whole
Oh, okay. I can't even address the second point that you made. I'm not even sure. I can't really explain it now. I'm not sure. On the first point that you made, just Ovadia didn't have a portrayal of Esav. Hashem told Ovadia what to say. That's what made him a Navi. So the given in the problem is those are the words of Ovadia Hanavi, but Sefer Ovadia, that's what Hashem told him to say. Kol Amar Hashem. So that negative portrayal of Esav is not like some guy editorializing, let's just vilify him or something. Okay. It's actually words of Nebuah. Yeah. So is it Esav the person, or is it Esav the nation and what it became, and Edom, etc. And that's a little too far afield for us to get that that far into it. My point methodologically. Pardon?
If that's the case, why do we have the nerve to even debate whether Esav is good or bad?
I didn't debate whether he's good or bad. It's just on the level of pshat. It doesn't tell you overtly, mostly, that he's bad until he gets to the part where he actually causes embitterment of the spirit for his parents, for intermarrying.
Right, with the wives.
What's the thing? Yeah. But why do we say that? That's what our tradition tells us. Why does the tradition tell us that? Because they looked and say for Ovadia, and the Navi said, look how terrible he was. And they understand, okay, so whatever we're reading in the story, there's a backstory, another layer. Now, why isn't it Torah Shebichtav? That's what we're spending all these shiurim trying to understand, that the portrayal in Torah Shebichtav does not make Esav out to be the murderer and the rapist and the violent person that he was, and that's trying to level off who's doing what precisely. Just like Nimrod, by the way, in the Torah is also just called a hunter. And if you look at level of pshat, and if you take, let's say, Ibn Ezra, his view of the word Nimrod when it comes up, right? His name means rebellion, but let's rebel. But they just say, okay, he's a hunter.
Merited rebellion, right?
Yeah. So, but the point is, when we read the story, we're in the struggle with Yitzchak trying to understand who this is. We're in the struggle of Yitzchak trying to understand who will emerge from this one or that one, and who will emerge from the family even of Yaakov Avinu, who later on in Jewish history may be, on the face of it, acting in a treacherous manner. All right, reach bigadav, reach bogdav, but there might be something redemptive within it. Maybe we'll live to see it. Maybe we don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Look at Pasuk Chavchet, verse 28. It's interesting that this is the end of an aliyah and the beginning of a new aliyah, right? But that is where Chazal broke it between the different aliyot. V'yitein l'cha Elokim mital hashamayim mishmanei aretz v'rov dagan v'tirosh. God should give you from the dew of heaven and the fat of the land, right? And you should have a lot of wine, of wheat and wine, right? Those two things. Yavducha amim. The nations should serve you. V'yishtachu l'cha le'umim v'gvir le'achecha, right? V'yishtachavu l'cha b'nei imecha. You should be a master to your brothers, and the children of your mother should bow to you. Those who curse you should be cursed. Those who bless you should be blessed. So, just interesting that Yitzchak thinks he's giving this bracha to Esav, and that he should give this bracha, which on the face of it again is various point out, various mefarshim point out. The idea here is that perhaps the feeling was Esav would be in charge of the world of statecraft, and Yaakov would be in charge of the world of the spirit. One would be the melech, one would be the kohen, right? One is the king, one is the priest, so to speak. One's in charge of of making things go, and therefore he needs material blessings. And the amim here are not necessarily nations; maybe it means like tribes of some sort. And that's a beautiful idea. Yeah, the rain should come at the right time. Therefore, you have the dew of heaven, the precipitation. You get the fat of the land, right? And then the idea that other nations will bow to you means you'll have a positive surplus, that that you're for export, etc. I mean, it's a very very beautiful bracha. The trouble is, of course, it's not to the right son. And then it goes to Yaakov. So Yaakov ends up getting these material brachas, right? If you notice, the bracha says the children, the sons of your mother, right? And as Chazal point out, Rashi quotes it here, like Yaakov said to Yehuda, Bnei Avicha, right? Because there were several mothers. But here, Yaakov, Rivka, and Yitzchak were just married to each other, the sons of your mother, single, right? Right? So it's just interesting that this is basically a material bracha that went to, in the end, it got to Yaakov. He ended up getting both, if you will. Yeah.
Rabbi,
yeah. Go ahead.
did Yitzhak know that Yaakov has the birthright now?
No.
Okay, because if he did, then this wouldn't make any sense. Okay,
not know.
thank you.
He does not know. He does not know. That's part of it, right? That he's giving him this bracha. The Tal HaShamayim, the Ramban says, it cannot just be dew, literally dew, right? What it means here is the bracha of Hashem, like the Reach Sadeh that Hashem had blessed, right? That Hashem had already given a bracha to. What's that? God gave a bracha to the field. You have to read it together. Vayigash v'yishaklo vayarach et reach bigadav, verse 27, right? Vayvarchehu vayomer re'ei reach b'nik reach zeh shebercho Hashem v'yitein lecha Elokim mital shema mishmanei aretz v'avin tirosh. Right? So harking back to that field that is already blessed. Right? The bracha of Hashem, like the reach sadeh that God already blessed. And the idea that there'll be a great success that he'll have in the world. The word bracha here means to add something for the Ramban, right? Something additional. That's why Rashi says v'yitein lecha means yitein v'yachzor v'yitein. Hashem should give you and should give you more, right? But then Rashi himself says, yeah, even though it sounds like God should give you and give you, the pshat is that it goes on reach b'ni. that Hashem already gave you this. This is the Reach Sadeh. So he should give you more. Also from the Tala Shemayim, right? And Rashi here uses the expression, Umidrasheh Agada yesh laharbe panim. The truth is, he says the Medrash says a lot about this, but he doesn't elaborate what those Midrashim are. Rashi basically tells you, you probably have a book in your house called the Medrash Rabbah. You go learn that. I'm not sharing that with you because it's not actually part and parcel of the Pshat. By the way, everything we learned today in the Medrash does not appear in Rashi. Why? Because Rashi decided, look, these are beautiful drushes. They're not actually answering questions in the text itself, right? They're not germane to understanding what the words mean. So Rashi, even though he doesn't always have the exact same definition of pshat, even that his own grandson Rashbam has, there's still something here where he wants it to relate to the pshat of the Torah, to answer questions, right? Notice that the notion that nations will work for you does not mean they'll be literally enslaved. It means they'll serve you. They'll do something else. They'll pay a tribute to you in some way, all right? But not that it's a case where there's going to be like an enslavement. Like I'm wishing that others will be enslaved to you, right? The idea that the sons of your mother, there's only one other son, will bow to you is also doesn't mean in the sense of worship, obviously, of subjugation. It means much more the sense of being what's the word? It's not quite subservient either. It's deferential to who you are and what you stand for. Once again, we have in Rashi the Rashi of the printing press and the Rashi of the manuscripts. In the Rashi of manuscripts, which then got into the later editions, but is not in the first printing, right? So the first printing might have been missing it for some reason. It's supposed to be there, or it might be by a Talmud of Rashi from his Beit Midrash, has also an explanation of the word taken from the world of Chazal, the word Ha'elokim. Notice that you have the Shem Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's really being used here throughout. Yaakov says it, Yitzchak says it in the Pasuk Chav Zayin, but in Pasuk Chav Chet, V'yitem Ha'elokim. Why did it go to Shem Elokim? Rashi says Mahu Elokim. This is again not in the original printing, but it's in Dfus Rishon. It's not there, but it appears in various manuscripts. What does that mean? Ha'elokim, may God bedin, in justice. Im ra'ui lecha yitain lecha. If you're worthy, you should get it. V'im lav lo yitain lecha. And if you're not worthy, you shouldn't get the bracha. All right. But when the bracha came to Esav, and there is going to be a bracha for Esav, there is no conditional language of the Ha'elokim involved in it. You know why? Oddly enough, Mishmane ha'aretz yemoshavecha, it's verse 39, is going to be the bracha to Esav. We'll get there when we get there. But very remarkably, bein tzaddik, bein rasha yitain lecha. Whether you're righteous, Esav, or not. Now all the masks have come off. He knows for sure it's Esav. May God give it to you. Right? Now, what does that mean? Why conditional for the person who ends up being Yaakov and not conditional for Esav? Because it turns out it's a bigger bracha to be able to have something conditional, back to Karen's point from before, that you earn through your free will and your choices, as opposed to a free handout. The handout it's a bracha, but you didn't earn it. It's not indexed to whether you're in a relationship with Hashem, right? May God be the one to give you the dew from heaven and the fat of the land. But later on, when he talks to Esav, where you live should be the place of the fat of the land. And that place is not a place necessarily that has anything to do with a relationship with God. Now, you'll say to me, well, that's not a good bracha. Doesn't Yitzchak want his child to worship God too? He does, but for whatever reason, he seems to be a little more wise to the fact that that's not in the cards in the same way. Remember, that was the inkling we had even in the story when Yaakov says, oh, God caused it to happen that I found this very quickly. That God made it easy for me. So come over here. Who is that? That sounds strange. That's Hakol Kol Yaakov Yadayim De Esav. And so now in this part, the bracha is V'tin L'chai Elokim. If you're worthy, then good. If not, then not. But the Midat Hadin, the attribute of justice here in the relationship between this person who's getting the bracha and a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the person who speaks about Hashem, the person who smells like the aroma of Gan Eden, etc. When Esav comes in after, none of that. And he's getting a bracha, but the bracha is based on what you are capable of. I can't make you earn it. It's not going to happen. So I'm just giving you the bracha. That's what you should have. Just like that. There's more here in Rashi, but we're out of time. I know people have another shiur they go to, so we'll let all of you go. But we'll resume again. We'll have a shiur on Thursday this week. We'll have a shiur next Monday, and then we'll be on hiatus for a little bit. Let me wish everyone a great day.
When is your Sunday? When is your Sunday talk
Sunday
on?
At 10 o'clock or 10:15.
Okay, it's gonna be on Zoom.
Yeah, in person and on Zoom. Yeah, both. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All the best. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.